For modern recording artists, singles tend to be the songs that showcase the band's talent and establish their legacy. These are the songs that receive radio play, get music videos, and are sold and marketed independent of albums. But those songs make up only a fraction of a recording artist's total creative output. Albums are littered with tracks that receive little to no promotion from either the artist or their record label. Additionally, many songs never make it past the demoing stage and are left unfinished or else unreleased. These more obscure songs, the ones that you have to go out of your way to look for, are often referred to as deep cuts, and today I'm going to be dissecting 5 deep cuts from one of the most influential bands of my childhood, Linkin Park. But first off, I'd like to talk a little bit about the band and their unique relationship with unreleased material. Despite enjoying mainstream success throughout the entirety of their career, Linkin Park were a band that had difficulty getting signed initially, and spent much of the late 90s recording multiple demo albums to shop around to major labels, with very little success. So, what they ended up doing was starting Linkin Park Underground, a fan club / street team that they distributed a lot of their early demos to in an effort to get street buzz. Once signed, they continued using Linkin Park Underground as a means to distribute unreleased, unfinished, and alternate versions of songs to their fans, which they had a wealth of due to the democratic nature of their album-making process, where the band members would individually vote on hundreds of rudimentary demos before settling on which tracks were to be developed. I bring all this up because it shows that Linkin Park were a band that, right from the beginning of their career, were providing their fans with a rich prehistory to explore and also glimpses into their artistic process, making them a band that is uniquely predisposed to having a wealth of supplemental material. And with that, I'm done with the little history lesson, so let's dig into the tracks I've picked. First up is Roads Untraveled off of Living Things.
Not for roads untraveled, weep not for sights unseen.
I like showing this track to people who are only really familiar with the first 2 Linkin Park records and missed a lot of that experimental stage between Minutes to Midnight and 1,000 Suns. It's very somber, and its lyrics are surprisingly poignant and focused. My biggest criticism of Linkin Park as I've gotten older is the lack of specificity in their lyrics. But on this particular song, I don't mind as much. I think the lyrics are greater than the sum of their parts, painting a portrait of loss that is more melancholy than it is angsty, while using its open-endedness to allow the listener to empathize on their own terms. Which, if you think about it, is what drew most people into their early recordings as a teenager. And it creeps up here again, only instead of a song about disillusionment, it's really about letting go of mistakes to find inner peace. And instrumentally, this song just swells so well. It's like the lyrics are adrift in this sea of stars and other twinkling things. I love it. Song number 2 is Qwerty off of Songs from the Underground. There was this period after Linkin Park released their second album, Meteora, where there was a surprising dearth of new material coming forward from the band. They'd reworked plenty of existing songs for the Reanimation Remix album and Collision Course with Jay-Z, but for a couple of years there wasn't even a lot of unreleased material coming from Linkin Park Underground that felt really refreshing. But then, the band went on a small tour of Japan while recording their third album and performed a track that they had been working on from those sessions. Bootlegs of the live performance made their way onto YouTube, treating the fans to one of the heaviest songs that Linkin Park have ever written. But what I find curious about Qwerty is less what it does as a song, and more what the band have done to reuse material from this track in later compositions. Specifically, that they incorporated elements of Qwerty into the songs Victimized off of Living Things and A Line in the Sand off of The Hunting Party. This sort of self-referencing doesn't tend to happen a lot in rock music, unless there's a larger overarching concept linking the songs that are being made. Additionally, it's not uncommon for bands to reuse lyrics if the songs in question are considered sequels to one another, like how Vermilion and Vermilion Part 2 by Slipknot both have the same chorus. Whereas these 3 songs by Linkin Park were released across 3 different albums over the course of a decade-long span without any obvious thematic connections. So you might be wondering why this is all that interesting. Well, it allows these 3 songs to be played as a medley, and not just in the fans go and mix all the songs together way, but Linkin Park actually perform these songs together on occasions, which means when they're writing albums, they're thinking about the performance aspect of these songs. To save time during their live sets, the band would often condense a lot of their ballads into medleys, and after a while it seems like they actually started writing material to use in this way, which I tend to think is more clever than it is lazy, because it gives fans a reward for paying attention to more obscure material and makes their live shows a bit more dynamic and interesting. Number 3, Jigga Faint off of the Collision Course EP. Full disclosure, Faint was the song that sort of ignited my interest in popular music, so I may be a little biased towards this song. But what I find captivating about this mashup is how the lyrical themes of the 2 songs seem to be responding to one another. On one hand, you have the incredibly chauvinistic verses of Jay-Z's Jigga, which describe a situation where he is boasting about actively betraying and ignoring the needs of somebody that he is involved with. And on the other hand, you have Linkin Park's Faint, a song about being ignored and demanding to be heard. So when these lyrics are placed directly following Jay-Z's misogynistic lyrics, they feel like the feminine response to Jay's behavior, as if they are the perspective of his spurned lover finally given voice. Which I think is really cool, because rarely do you see mashups bringing out a new dynamic between the combined lyrics of 2 songs. Now, for the 4th track, I chose She Couldn't off of the Hybrid Theory demos. As I mentioned earlier, there was a period in Linkin Park's early career where they were re-releasing and re-recording various versions of their first album, Hybrid Theory. Outside of the original studio cut, these songs were remixed on the Reanimation album, mashed up with Jay-Z tracks for the Collision Course EP, as well as appearing on the Live in Texas DVD. My point is that this material was what fans were most familiar with, because these songs were released and re-released in so many different versions at a time where there wasn't a lot else to listen to by this band. So when the pre-production demos leaked almost a decade after that album's release, it was surprising to find that there was still a song yet unreleased from these sessions. But what makes She Couldn't stand out even more is how drastically different it sounds from the rest of the material that ended up forming the final album. This song has a lot of atmosphere to it, and almost like a trip-hop or down-tempo vibe. as opposed to the aggressive tones and high energy that we saw on most of the material from Hybrid Theory. And likewise, the lyrics are much more forlorn and mellow compared to the emotional bombast coming from Chester Bennington throughout the record. Now, the song itself never got out of the demo phase because there was problems with sample clearance, but it's questionable whether or not the song would have fit the mood of the album overall. And so it remains an interesting artifact from that era of the band's career. A stylistic dead end that suggests pathways that never really opened up. But damn, do I like night driving to this shit. And lastly, we have When They Come For Me off of 1,000 Suns. This song comes off of kind of a curious record in Linkin Park's discography. 1,000 Suns is a vaguely apocalyptic concept album where the band decided to experiment with their writing process, allowing song ideas to flow from one to the next regardless of a conventional pop structure, which gave a lot of the material on this record this proggy flavor. And this song in particular takes on a very Led Zeppelin, Kashmir, immigrant song vibe, at least instrumentally. The song is vocally dominated by Mike Shinoda's rapping, which is a far cry from Robert Plant. But the thing I like about Mike's performance in this song is that it is genuinely furious. Usually a lot of the angst and anger that gets pinned on Linkin Park stems from Chester Bennington's majestic screaming. But on this song, Mike is addressing the mixed reaction from fans when the band decided to abandon their original nu metal sound and start experimenting. On their previous record, Minutes to Midnight, the lead single, What I'd Done, had been a declaration of the band's intent to change and evolve, whereas When They Come For Me is a diatribe on how far they were willing to go on 1,000 Suns to put the nail in that coffin. And this sentiment is backed up with abrasive industrial blasts and world music rhythms all spiraling together, sounding like a rejection of both the alternative rock of their previous record and the nu metal anthems that got them famous. For a band that is so pop, this song felt really ambitious and challenging to me when it first came out, and it's grown to be one of my favorite things they've done. So that wraps up my analysis of these 5 Linkin Park deep cuts. You should go check them out. I think they're pretty cool, but, I mean, what do I know? Anyway, thanks for listening to my shitty opinions. Ciao.